What's good, y'all? It's your boy Danza. Just one of the many faces of the machine known as the Danza Project. Please do me a favor if you rock with us. Hit that like button, subscribe button, and turn those notifications on. We appreciate you. Salute. So this is the Danza Project. Today we have a very special guest. We actually have two very special guests. We got my guy G Money, and for those that don't know, all right, he is the shoe god, right? This is the shoe god, and I'm not even gonna go ahead and introduce you the wrong way. I want you to talk to the people and let the people know who we have up here today.
All good. Hey, man, appreciate you taking the time, showing love, and I'm always willing to share whatever I can with folks who really get on with the business. So, Gentry Humphrey, former vice president of Jordan Footwear, was in the brand for 32 years, responsible for footwear and apparel at one point, but primarily all of footwear product creation, design, development, product marketing, and so yeah, that was a big part of my role. I retired in 2021, started my own consulting firm, and through that, I was asked to lead Jordan Golf, and so I do consulting for the brand on Jordan Golf, and then I started my own footwear company, Code by Gentry, which basically deals with lifestyle footwear. And so we launched last July, and I just took the knowledge that I gained over that 32-year career and applied it in a new way to help the next generation of young creatives do their thing. So, and we can talk about that later.
Yeah. So, in layman's terms, we got a legend in the building. All right, that a lot of our feet look a lot better. You know what I mean? When we're out there, based on the things that you have done. And your work, and we can't discount that, right? Like today is also the release of the retro Air Jordan 17s. So that has a crazy story behind it, and we'll get into that. And we also, again, we got my guy Jae Skeese in the building of Drumwork Music Group. Jae Skeese, how you feeling today?
And I'm feeling great.
Talk to the people. Let the people know who you are and why we have you here today. That's the important part.
Sir, man. Well, you know, they the separation or highs. You already know, man. No, I talk that super talk. That's all I do. You know what I mean? I got the series right now. We up to 3, but you know what? We on the Danza Project, so I'm gonna let y'all know on the new album Brown Level. I got Econ 4 coming out, produced by Ski Beats. So that's coming real soon. You know, Econ 3, we did the video out there in Las Vegas with Urban Necessities, man. Shout out my boy JC. You know what I mean? So we putting on for the sneaker culture, you know, and all my buyers and everything that I talk about, it's all about sneakers. You know, I got a deep appreciation for, you know, Jordan brand, Nike as a whole. So, you know, I'm just excited to be here, man, and chop it up with the legend, man. G Money, what's going on?
It's all good, brother. Good to see you.
Now, Skeese, let's dive into what you've done throughout your life to kind of put this all together so it all makes sense, right? So tell us about your history with shoes.
Yeah, so you know, before I got into music, I guess you could say professionally, I was working in retail. I worked at you know, obviously you guys know Finish Line or JD Sport. I worked there for some time. I worked at DTLR Villa for some time, running their stores, and you know, obviously, you know, we would have different meetings. We would meet with like the different econs from Nike, and they would give us all the information about whatever you know, drops were coming, whatever new technology was going in the schools and things like that. So I mean, I just have a background, and I look at now all that experience and that love for sneakers. And once I got into music professionally, I said, you know, there's not a lot of people that, you know, really put on in that way. You know, obviously you got, you know, there's some big sneakerheads in the game. You know, you got the Nas's, you got the Wale's, and, you know, the Chuck Englishes and things of that nature, those people. But nobody has really said, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make, you know, primarily what I talk about, I'm gonna make these references to these different shoes and the names of the shoes, the colorways. And so I saw like an opportunity for that. And that's what that's what I do through my music, primarily. And that's what I want to be known for. So, with that background that I have in shoes, that's just how I put on for the culture and what I love.
And that is exactly why we have you today. That's why we brought you up here, because I thought that this would be a fun conversation. Everything that we do here is about having like a real conversation with people. So it's the way G Money, the way I like to present it is this way, is just imagine that we're meeting. One of your buddies says, hey, like this is my buddy G Money, this is my buddy Jae Skeese, it's my buddy Danza, and all of a sudden we just sit in the room and we talk. And I want the people to feel this organically. So what I want to know about you is, how did this all begin for you? What brought you into, to design anything, right, that becomes a staple in fashion is incredible, right? But right. You had to develop a love for it somewhere. So tell us how this began for you.
Yeah. First of all, if you were to meet me in person, you'd see that I'm 5'5" on a good day. but you couldn't tell me growing up as a kid that I wasn't going to the league, to the NBA.
I saw the jump shot.
Yeah. So my passion around the game of basketball has been there since I was really little. Also, since I was really young, there's a story that I used to tell. People used to ask me how I got to where I was, and I used to say it was a matter of being at the right place at the right time. But I realized even at a young age that I had kind of a sense for fashion. My mom used to tell me as a 5-year-old going to kindergarten, each night before I went to school, I would lay out 3 outfits. And one of those outfits was, I wanted to be GQ. I wanted to be the sharpest dude in the school. I wanted to then, whatever sport I was going to play when I came back out from school, I had that laid out and everything was hooked up from head to toe. And then for whatever reason, I was into cowboys. And so I would put up a little cowboy outfit as a 5-year-old. But I only share that story to say that a sense of kind of merchandising, fashion, putting things together was a part of who I was even as a young kid at 5 years old. So when you blend all that together, love of sport, love of fashion, I think it was a natural thing for me to be involved in the things that I do today. So yeah, it's been a great ride. I couldn't put a price tag on some of the things that I've been able to experience, in the industry. Obviously working with Michael Jordan has been kind of huge. And then working with the many artists and designers that we've collabed with over time has been awesome. And so, I think what I'm probably most known for, though, is bringing back the retro game. And because there was a time where we tried to do some things. We tried to re-release like an Air Jordan 3, and it actually didn't work. And so I went back, recrafted it, and with the team, and we made sure that we got the shoe right. We brought it back out again the right way, and it created the phenomenon of retro business from that point on. And so all the drops that are now re-released, are really a part of kind of that storyline that we created back in the day.
And now, how did you get there? Like,
yeah.
what transpired that got you into the industry?
Yeah. So like I said, as a kid, I loved basketball. I thought I was going to be a professional basketball player. I played high school basketball. I didn't get any Division I offers. And so I went to Division II school, and then ended up realizing through a crazy story how the junior college, I went to a junior college before that. And the junior college coach, he changed up the offense because we ended up getting this huge dude that was 7'4". So we went from a running gun offense to throw everything into the post, let him get 40 a game. That's when I realized, okay, I better pick up another something else in my repertoire. And so I started working for a company called Nordstrom, retailer. Started off in the stock room for them. My persona was always just to be the best that I could be. So I was in the stock room, best stock room, the guy that they had. They promoted me up through the ranks. I became a buyer for them, was their number one salesperson. And then Nike recruited me from there based on doing business. And so prior to me getting there as a buyer, they hadn't done any athletic shoes. And so I brought in athletic shoes into the company. And then the rest was history. You know, they recruited me from there. And then I had multiple jobs that led me to ultimately being, you know, the head of Jordan Footwear.
And what was it like the day you met the GOAT?
Well, I'll tell you a crazy story. So the day that I knew that I was going to meet him, I was super excited because to me, he's the best to ever do it, you know. And I was really excited. Wanted the presentation to go really well. He used to do a basketball camp in Santa Barbara for kids. And so we met at this camp, and I call him. Well, first of all, I get there about 30 minutes prior because I want the presentation to go well. And I call him up, say, hey, I'm here. He says, okay, well, meet me at this spot. So at this time, you know, it was back in the day. Computers were super heavy. I got all these bags of samples of Jordan shoes that I'm going to show him and update him on. And so I'm lugging this stuff across this hotel, which was a massive hotel. I get to the spot and he's not there. Oh. And I'm like, hey, I'm here, but you're not here. And he's like, hey, you know what? My bad. We had to bounce. We had to go to this place, blah, blah, blah. So I need you to meet me at this spot. So now I go all the way across the other side of the hotel, lugging all this stuff. I'm sweating. Now I'm late to the meeting. So, and I really pride myself on being on time. So now I'm late and I'm kind of pissed off. And so I call him, and I get there, no answer. He's not there either. So now I'm really heated, but call him up. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm here. He goes, man, we had to leave that spot. We had an emergency. We had to go here, blah, 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 blah. So he takes me to the third spot. Man, I'm sizzling hot now because now I'm trudging all that stuff across the hotel property. I finally get to the spot, ring the doorbell, and one of his boys opens up the door, and I see him in the distance playing cards with his boys. And the first thing he says to me is, it's about time, you short shit. No hi, no nothing. And so I look at him, I said, well, if your ass could give some decent directions, I might have been here on time.
There you go.
He fell out laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing. Well, the crazy thing about the story is I didn't know at the time that was a test. He was testing me to see if I was going to be one of those yes guys. Oh, I'm sorry, Michael, blah, blah, blah. I didn't mean to da. And so that was the start of the true relationship, because I fired right back at him. And he's like, this guy is not just going to be a yes guy. This is going to be a guy that I can rock with. So it was a crazy story. And for me, I was kind of hot, but I realized that it was a true start of a friendship, and it was a level of trust that I was able to build with one of the greatest to ever do it.
That's actually a really dope story. You know, because it's true though. A lot of people do look at somebody, and it's not difficult to look at a Michael Jordan and be a yes man. You know what I mean? Like most people would sit there and be like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry."
Yeah, yeah.
Especially being 5'5", looking at somebody that's over there. You know what I mean?
Yep. So it was crazy.
That's amazing, actually. So you've been over there since what? The regional sales rep for Nike since '94.
Actually, since I started the company in '89.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I started in '89, and I worked on the sales side for a little bit, but then I was always infatuated with product creation versus sales. And so I would always, even when I was on the sales side for a brief stint, I would work with the product creation guys just because the creative side is what I really loved. Yeah, I was saying, so I started in '89, and one of the when I got there, one of the projects that I was just starting to finish up was the Air Jordan 4 colorways, working with the guys on those.
So are you the originator of, the retros and the re-releasing them in different colorways?
Yeah, responsible for re-releasing it. Like I said, we had dropped the Air Jordan 6, and we had so many people that were requesting Air Jordan 3s to come back. We re-released the 3s, but didn't scrutinize the product. When we re-released it at the time, it didn't come back in the right way. So I went and we released the product, and once it didn't do very well, I got the product back and just really scrutinized it. And I found literally 27 little things that were wrong with the original, or with the comeback shoe, that weren't like the original. So then I worked with the team to recraft that to make it exactly, or as close to as possible as the original shoe as we could. And then we re-released that. And when we re-released it the right way, it took off. So again, what I was probably most known for was coming up with the stories and concepts on new product, as well as what we're going to do on re-released product, and then creating a cadence of that re-released products, whether it was the 3, the 5, the 4, the 6, whatever numbers, throughout my entire career. So, yeah.
And it made history along the way.
So I remember, and this is kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but I remember back in 2008, man, and Jordan Brand, they decided it was like the whole year. They just did like collision packs, and it was dope. You know what I mean? Because it was hard to get your hands on them. And I just remember that time, man, because everybody wanted retros, but you can only get retros if you got the collision packs. Like, and I know obviously you had a hand in that decision. Do you think, like now in 2024, do you think, Jordan Brand and Nike, could they still do something like that? Because I feel like it made the demand for like those retros so much more high for that whole span here. Do you feel like they could do something like that today in 2024?
I definitely do. It's for me, what I always wanted to do is, there's certain models that are extremely coveted by consumers. And not all retro shoes are created equal, but some are super coveted. And so if you run the risk of putting too many of them out there too often, like the specialness around them, in my mind, starts to wane. And to me, I never wanted that to happen. I wanted people to always be in love with their favorite shoes. And, people always want what they can't have. So if you give them too much of it, then eventually it becomes just a commodity, and it's not sought after, or is not loved as much. So, when we did that project, it was about how do we try to not put too many out there? How do we do it in a new concept that allows people to appreciate and respect, a whole new story that we could bring to the marketplace? And to be honest with you, I feel like there's always that opportunity to do things like that. It's just, you got to sit down and be a little more creative, and you got to be able to balance the business side with the creative, and the side that allows you to kind of drive revenue in a smart way versus just, trying to do too much.
For sure. Definitely. So, like another question for you. I remember, man, back in the day, this might've been, 05, 06. There was something that I would always see with like the Tor Yellow. I think it's called the Tor Yellow 4. And it's a few of them. Like the Inverse, I think it's called the Inverse 5. Those were all part of like a series of Jordans called the L style or lifestyle Jordans. What happened to that whole like the L style lifestyle? Because I remember those releases would come with like shirts and like, it was like hats. It was like a level up on the material and all that. What happened to that whole program?
Yeah, it was honestly, it was a project that was really ahead of its time. What from an apparel perspective, what the brand tried to do back then was an apparel collection called 2-3. And the apparel collection was kind of this elevated lifestyle apparel. And so at the time I was running all of the footwear, and I just wanted to create lifestyle footwear that would go with that elevated apparel. And, it did everything from, denim to leather jackets, all that stuff. And so, creating that footwear was just a new perspective. It was an elevated perspective on what we had done already on the sports side of business. And so once the apparel, it was tough to distribute the apparel in the right doors. And so not having the right doors that could handle that level of product at the time is really what kind of was the demise of the apparel. So once the apparel started to fade away, then the footwear kind of went with it. So, yeah, so it was primarily, left the scene because it was really ahead of its time.
Yeah, got you. One more question for you. And again, I've been into it since, the early, 2000s, you know what I mean? And not even buying the sneakers, but just being a fan of the overall culture. What were some of the steps that Jordan Brand had to take to take Jordan Brand from being like, it was big here in America, obviously, with the NBA and with, the sneaker culture. You had Seinfeld wearing, Jordans back in the day, and then up to, Jadakiss and the Locks and, all these different people wearing them here in America. What were some of the steps that Jordan Brand had to take to grow it into this international, like, symbol of culture and basketball and just everything that we love?
Yeah, so, it's funny. This is a crazy story. So in the height, like, to me, the report card of a job well done was back in the day watching consumers line up outside of retailers' doors trying to get the shoes that we created. And so at the height, when we first started, so I had to go into to Phil Knight's office, the founder of Nike, with three other gentlemen, and pitch the story of helping the brand Nike see that Jordan could be a sub-brand of Nike. And so when we did that, the brand had established an apparel footwear business that was about $160 million at the time. And so as we started to grow that business, you fast forward a bit and the business is rocking and people are standing outside buying the shoes. We quickly went from $160 million business to $1 billion in about 9 years. And so taking it to $1 billion, the brand came to me and basically said, hey, look, right now we're about 90% US driven, and we need to be able to take this. If we're going to grow the business more, we need to take it abroad. So they asked me to take on a job where I was the international GM for Jordan. They gave me 3 people to work with me to try to grow the rest of the world. And what I did is just realize that I had to understand where the brand resonated the most. So I went to Europe and found a couple places. I went to London one time, and these guys took me and they said, oh, this is where the hot spot is, where they're hooping. Man, I went there. These dudes were rocking Birkenstocks and black socks. And I was like, nah, this is not it. I'm like, this is not it. So I talked to some young cats that were worked at the Nike Town in London, and they told me about a couple other spots. So I went there and I was like, yeah, I found some young cats that I thought were really right. Then I went to the city of Paris, and I fell in love with this one outdoor event. It was called K54. And literally it was a park that you really couldn't see basketball being played because you heard the music. It was just like being in New York City. You heard hip hop blaring. You had people hanging out in trees watching the basketball. The courts were crap. You had grass going through the concrete. But you had everything there that represented basketball culture. You had fine girls, and obviously guys looking at the fine girls looking at the hoopers. You had music going, you had barbecue setting. Like it was truly authentic basketball culture. And so I knew right then and there that was a spot that I needed to revolve the business around. So because it was basically everything that happens in the US, it was their version at a smaller scale in Paris. So I started finding little places outside of the US that were just like that. So I found some places in Beijing. I found some places in Mexico City. So I started to identify all these areas where the culture was real, and then just wanted to bring product to that culture and then let it grow naturally. And literally that's what happened. It just took care of itself once you went to the right places.
Yeah,
That's super dope. Wow. Because I asked that because, I kind of watched it happen in real time. So the way that you just described it, like that's actually mind blowing because I watched that happen in real time. Listen, man, this is what I really do. So to sit here, really have a conversation with him is, bro, it's blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. That just drove me into like that whole world. Now I'm seeing it through perfectly. You can hear us, G?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. All right. So Skeese, just start right from the final question. Just start from there, and then we'll.
So one more question. I remember this might have been like 2009, 2010ish. Man, there was a point in time when prior to that there was the regular clear icy bottom, and it had that distinct smell. When shoes was still DS, it was like a certain smell, and then they went to like that blue tinted clear bottom. What was the deciding factor of that? Why did y'all go from the clear to the blue tinted clear?
Yeah. Well, so first off, when you're building product for one of the best players to ever play the game, you got to build product that functions first and foremost. Yeah, you want it to look cool, got to have the swag because that's just how he rolls, but it's got to function. So I think what people started to notice when we did the Air Jordan 11, that's when you first saw kind of the tint on the clear outsole. But the clear outsole had a purpose for us. So what people may or may not know is Michael had the season before we did the 11, he had plantar fasciitis where your arches start to collapse. And so what trainers used to do is put these steel plates that look like the form of the shoe underneath the sock liner of the shoe so that the shoe wouldn't really bend that much. Because what happens is the tendons underneath your foot, if the shoe flexes too much, they start to stretch even more, and it makes those tendons stretch. And so when the tendons stretch, that's how you get plantar fasciitis and the arches start to fall. So what we did is we wanted to build a shoe that had the stiffness that was going to be needed to allow Michael to sustain an 82 game season plus the playoffs. And so rather than using a steel plate, we chose to use carbon fiber because it was super lightweight, but yet it was just as stiff and sturdy as a steel plate would be. And so when you're putting some technology into the shoe, the worst thing to do is to cover that up and not allow people to see the story behind why you did what you did. So we used a clear outsole so that people could see the remnants of the carbon fiber plate. So it was actually functional. We wanted people to see what the product had to offer from a performance standpoint. Now, what would happen in the past, if you didn't use any of that blue tint, you would notice that it would yellow a lot faster. So a clear would have a tendency as it aged, based on the solvents that are used to adhere the outsole to it, would start to yellow a little bit faster. So once we were able to provide that tint, it held its color a lot longer, and it allowed people to, appreciate the overall aesthetic of the shoe with a lot longer lifespan.
Man, what a dope story! Like to learn about how that all happens is wild.
This just made this is like my life right here. So to get that explanation, that's
good,
crazy.
Man. All good.
Thank
you. Man, that's amazing. Now, there's a lot of controversy when we talk about, the lines and how, people are waiting for those Jordans, and we know historically, a lot of people have lost their lives with that. What are your thoughts on that?
It was something that really weighed on us very heavily. And we tried to do anything within our power to kind of make sure that we kept people out of harm's way. So we used to launch product on Wednesdays. Well, we knew kids would sometimes want to cut school to go cop their J's, and that wasn't right. So we took them off of Wednesday launch dates, moved them to Saturdays. Then when we all started, offering them on Saturdays, that's when the line started to catch up, and then you had people, doing all kind of crazy things to get them. So what we tried to do is always really scrutinize like the quantities that we put out, so that we weren't keeping the industry or the market so shallow that it kept people in that fever that was out of control fever. And so anything that we could do to try to alleviate that, we would. We would encourage folks to do lotteries. We would encourage, we just provided a ton of suggestions for people to try to prevent those things. The sad thing is ultimately, like, you can only do so much, because people are going to do and be who they're going to be. Whether it's shoes, whether it's watches, like we see things today where people just are going to do what they're going to do. So to some degree, it was beyond, our control, but where we could try to influence people to try to alleviate those types of things, we tried to do. So it was, it always weighed heavy on us, but, we could only do what we could do.
Absolutely. And it really, like, it's tough, because it's like the responsibility falls on you from, the way the media would try to push it. But in reality, that's something that really is out of everyone's control. It's like, what do? You just not release the sneaker? Was there any ways that you've tried to make it happen that just didn't work?
Yeah, well, again, it's one of those things, like, you run into almost a no-win situation. So, obviously, as we got closer to the internet and you try to get people to do things online, that was one way. You look at kind of what's the way it is today. To me, there's some fault in the way it's playing out today. I mean, people are forced to go online and take L's on a regular, because they can't get some of the shoes that they covet. Yeah, it's a lot safer nowadays, but it's also, it's created a whole nother world of cyber, action that's changed it. So, yeah, so to me, like, what's happening now really doesn't necessarily work. But I'm not sure there's really a right answer to it. Maybe it's a combination of things that will allow it to, to kind of flourish and be right for everybody. But yeah, it's a tough one.
Now, here's a question I have for both of you.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the most iconic Air Jordan ever? We're going with the one Bred or the Concord 11s?
I'm gonna let him go first.
Man, you know what? To me, I have to say the Concord 11, but again, my AKA is the separation of Jordan Mids and Jordan Highs. So obviously, the one is very special to me. But I do recognize that the world loves the Jordan 11. I just feel like, that patent leather, the clear bottom, that can't be replaced. You know what I mean? In the minds and hearts of most people. But to me, I'm gonna say the Concord 11. But most impactful to me is the Bred one.
Ironically, we're really closely aligned. So by far, the Air Jordan 11 in the Concord color is the number one. Now, if you were to rewind probably as far back as 6-7 years, when I was last there, I wanted to create a foundation of fundamentally sound product. And so we used the AJ1 as that strategic shoe that would be more democratic, that would allow us to drive the business and, really separate the brand and take it to another level. So when you look at sheer volume of the Air Jordan 1 based on the low, the mid, and the high, now it's become its own huge, if you talk about revenue, overall revenue, it's probably number one. But up until 6-7 years ago, by far it was the AJ 11, and today it still is the AJ 11. Now, the crazy thing about the AJ 11, so it was in the days before, the digital world that we live in. What people don't know is the AJ 11 could have almost not happened.
Mm.
So when the shoe came in, the first sample, man, I was like a kid in a candy store. It was, to me, the best thing since chocolate cake. It was like, to me, by far, it had changed the game like no other shoe in the entire industry had ever seen. And so I loved it. And so what we used to do back in the day is we used to go out and do these focus groups. We did focus groups all over the world. We'd go out and talk to kids that were in the inner cities of New York, LA, Chicago, all over the world. We would go out and just vibe with kids and talk to them about what they thought were the coolest shoes that we were getting ready to introduce. And usually in these focus groups, you can tell the guys who are the early adopters, the guys who get it, who are trendsetters, who are not afraid to zig when everyone else zags, which is what we always tried to do. And so every now and then you'd see a kid that was like, yeah, I'm feeling that. But for the most part, 90% of those focus groups, people in those were crapping all over the Air Jordan 11. I mean, killing it, because all they kept saying is, it's got that shiny stuff on the shoe. That stuff is what they wear on tuxedo shoes. Like, you got to take that off. And they were killing it. They were killing it. So at one point we went back and we're like, man, should we drop this? But what you don't know is, like, MJ actually wanted patent leather on the Air Jordan 9s. He actually had the vision for it long before. And he was saying, I believe that at some point this will cross over and people will wear these with tuxedos. So we didn't do it on the 9. We put it on the 11. We actually made it functional on the 11. So I told you about, the bottoms and why it was important to use the carbon fiber plate, but also we wanted to keep the shoe lightweight. So in the upper, that's why you got the mesh around it. But we always used to look at Sports Illustrated and used to see these hard cuts that guys like Gary Payton would make. And as he's making his hard cut, his foot is basically rolling off of the foot frame, and you see the shoe almost look like it's ready to blow out. Well, we were looking at that and we said, hey, we could use patent leather in a strategic way that allows the shoe to perform better. So that's why the shape around the Air Jordan 11 and the patent leather is what it is. It helps keep Michael at the time on the foot frame of the shoe, because the properties of a patent leather doesn't stretch like a full grain leather. So full grain leathers, when they get sweaty and soft, the leather starts to stretch. Well, on the patent leather, you don't have those same stretch properties. So now we were like, you know what, this is functional. We got to rock with it. Yeah, we could substitute it for another material, but Michael loves it. We love it. We're just going to rock with it. And if people don't get it, then they don't get it. And so it was contemplated on taking it off, but we went back and said, no, we're rocking with it. And here it is. It's my favorite shoe because of that. We stuck to our guns. We weren't afraid to kind of be different and go against the grain. And now, it's one of the most coveted shoes in the entire line.
Damn.
Man, I'm glad I did that, man. And I just want to say thank you again, Migs, G Money. I want to say thank y'all, man. So y'all can see my beautiful daughter just made it in.
Shout out to your daughter. Yeah.
Definitely appreciate it, and for just giving me the time. G Money, thank you for allowing me to ask you some questions. You know what I mean? And just giving insight on everything, man. It's great to talk to you. And Migs, man, I definitely appreciate you as well, man, for sure.
Absolutely. Always, my brother. I'll talk to you soon. Appreciate you
joining me. All good, boss.
Now, G Money, did you come up with the cool gray color concept?
Yeah. So this is a funny story. So one night, and I'm a kind of guy that I just don't sleep when things come to me. I just get up and I got to do them. And so as it is, I wake up every morning. Even today, I get up every morning at 4:30, 4 o'clock, and I'm off to running my day. But when things come to me, they just come to me. And so on this particular project, on the Air Jordan 11, on the cool grays, I woke up one morning at 2 a.m. and I just had this epiphany, and it wasn't rocket science. It was just something that I felt like we had to do to create a new colorway that people could accept and appreciate. And so I woke up at that morning, went straight into the office and started doing the colorway. And by the time the developer had walked into the office that morning, I sat down with them, said, "Hey, look, this is what we got to do." And the inspiration literally came from the Air Max 95, which was a running shoe at the time that was done in a gray and a lime color. And I just loved how it did shades of gray. And so I said, let's just apply this to a hoop shoe, but yet let's do it in a way where when you look at it fashionably, it's going to work with most people's outfits. So I didn't want to add any crazy extra colors to it. I just thought shades of gray was a neutral way of bringing something new to the shoe. And so that's kind of how it was birthed. It took off.
And I know that something else that was pretty like that raised what's going on over here is you left in 2014, I believe, or 2015. You decided to leave Nike, right? And it wasn't long before they brought you right back. So could you explain to us what happened in that time?
Yeah, so I was about to leave. I didn't really leave. So in 2014, we had some changes within the organization, and I was asked to go to the Nike side and try to build a business that was called Amplifying Sport. And what that meant at that time was every category, they wanted to build iterations for the consumer 24/7. So you wanted to build basketball product when the consumer was off the court, as well as product when the consumer was training off the court. So we did lifestyle product, training product, and actual on-court product. And so I was asked to go back and build that business on the lifestyle side for Nike. And so what I did was I was then responsible for all of Nike sportswear. And so when I went over there, it was rebuilding the Air Force One. The Air Force One business had started to, soften up. And so they asked me to kind of build a franchise business around that. So I did that and started to expand it. We did versions of Air Force Ones. We did Flyknit versions. We did comfort versions. We did all these different versions of Air Force One. And then I had the Foamposite. And so I was asked to kind of bring new life to that. And so we did some crazy things around telling stories. So it was using some of the storytelling that I had applied in the Jordan world, starting to apply it to the Nike side with some of the Nike franchises that had deep history. So, the Foamposite, we did a shoe like the Galaxy Foamposite. We brought that back. LeBron had been built up in his signature shoe. And so I was asked to tell some stories, lifestyle stories around LeBron. And so I did the LeBron cork shoe, in celebration of one of his championships. So I did had the team do an all over cork version of it. So creating new concepts in 2014 for the lifestyle part of the business. So then 3 years into that, it was really interesting. The company, I felt like, didn't really appreciate some of the things that I was able to bring. And I just felt like if they weren't appreciating me the way I thought they should, maybe it was just time for me to move on and do some other things. And so I reached out to some folks and told them that, hey, look, I'm looking to what is it that you might want to do to stay on? And so being an avid golfer at the time, I actually went into the golf business and just ran the golf business. And so I did that for like 3 years and was able to turn that around. Golf, I didn't feel like it was on the footwear side was where it needed to be. And so I did some things there that allowed the golf business to kind of take off, and then was asked to go back to Jordan in 2018 to kind of bring back some new life into Jordan back again. And so I did that from 2018 to 2021.
Yeah, that's.
I never
you
really
got
fully left,
quite
but I
the story.
got out and did some new things.
Yeah. So you came up with the Galaxy idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why did we never get a pair of Galaxy Jordans?
You know what? Probably because at the time, the guys that were responsible for Jordan at the time, usually there's kind of a definitive line between the two. Sometimes there's a little bit of crossover, but most of the time, the Nike side does the Nike thing and the Jordan side does the Jordan thing. And so, for me, the story was all around at that year, the story was around NASA and the whole world of space. And so we just took that story because it was a relevant story, being that the All-Star game was there. And we basically said, okay, how could we tell this story around space? And, Galaxy Foams ended up being kind of the lead project. And, we did a few other projects on the lifestyle side. So we had some other projects that we aligned to that outside of the Foamposite. But at that time, the Jordan group was doing their own thing. So,
man, there's just so much. Like there's so much that we could go through. So, for you, aside from the iconic shoes, right?
Yeah.
For you, what is your personal favorite shoe outside of that?
Well, I'll always say the Concord one is my favorite. I wear probably what's called the Taxi 12. It's a white black 12, probably the most, just because I just feel like that shoe goes with so many things so well. But my favorite shoe is probably another, what I believe is an underrated shoe, a shoe that was way ahead of its time. Outside of those two would be the Air Jordan 23. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the story behind that shoe, man, it was so ahead of its time. It was about diversity and thinking. It was about innovation. It was about sustainability. So the inspiration for that particular shoe, I took the entire team to an Indian reservation in Vegas. And we looked at the hand craftsmanship of all the things that the Native American culture had to offer. And we're like, man, this is so cool. If we can bring a level of craftsmanship to the shoe, man, it would be more elevated, more appreciated. At the time, Michael was into motorcycle racing. And so we looked at his world of motorcycle racing and the technology. And so when you see the chassis of the harness that runs around the perimeter of the shoe, you see that it mimics a lot of the chassis that's attached to motorcycle racing. And then, we were like, okay, I give credit to Tinker Hatfield, who was the lead designer at the time. He then was like, you know what, let's take this to the next level. The world needs sustainability. And so all of the solvents that we used to create the shoe were more water-based solvents than the industry had ever used. And then how we had to construct the shoe was way different than how shoes were constructed at the time. So all of that, it was before people even started talking about sustainability and doing what's right. And before they started talking about the nature of hand craftsmanship and fine craftsmanship, this product had it all. And we were able to storytell on it. If you looked at the embroidery treatment that we used on the quarter panels of the shoe, we were able to tell stories of like Michael's signature. We were just able to do so many things with that shoe. And then, something as simple as the traction pattern on the bottom of it. If you look at the traction pattern of it, it's actually Michael's thumbprint. So we took Michael's thumbprint, and really it's a version of his thumbprint because we don't want his actual thumbprint out there. But they created the traction pattern of the shoe. So it was just so far ahead of its time. And when you look at the overall aesthetic of it and how we chose to introduce it, to me, it's one of my favorite shoes because it's the best of the best in building a brand that tries to, zig when everyone else zags and tries to take someone to someplace completely new. To me, that shoe did it all.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that and in an interview that I'm asking you 50 questions, right?
Yeah.
But do you believe that if there's no Jordan, that Nike brand grows to where it is today?
I think it grows because, back then, from an innovation standpoint, it was a company that was not afraid to make moves, not afraid to kind of be bold and irreverent in their spirit. And I think that is the connection to basketball culture, hip hop. And when I say basketball culture, I think of hip hop, fashion, sport, uh, art, that all kind of is collective around basketball culture. And so the company was able to tap into that because of its irreverency. So I think because others were afraid to do it, didn't know how to get into basketball, I think it still would have grown, but I do not believe it would have grown to the level that has grown without Jordan.
Absolutely. And when you say that, you got to include yourself. I know a lot of people don't want to take credit and things of that nature, but when you're telling the story about traveling abroad and being able to find locations to where you can really put that shoe out there, and you really think about how that works, is you're developing the culture over there too. Without you, is there these international superstars that there are today? Those types of things is really what, like, you put a pair of Jordans on and you all of a sudden you feel like you're not 5'5" anymore.
Right.
So like, have you ever gotten an opportunity to get on the court with him?
Oh yeah. So he continued to do things. He used to do a camp for adults called Flight School, and that used to be held in Vegas. So he did the kids camp in Santa Barbara, and he did an adults camp in Vegas. And so he was always hit the courts there. But I mean, the dude was, he could talk the most crap, but when you could back it up, like, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He's special.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the GOAT. Like when you really talk about GOATs, he is the GOAT. Now, before I let you go, you've had a lot of incredible rollouts of shoes, and today again is the re-release of the 17s. Now, talk to us about this specific release.
Yeah. Super special shoe. So what I love about, there's a lot of pressure in trying to create the next great shoe for one of the greatest athletes. And year after year, we just took on the test of doing that. And so the secret weapon really is Michael, because Michael was awesome. We would come to him with various concepts and share those concepts with him. And then he was always able to apply it to his world that he lived in. And we always got these nuggets that we could apply to the overall concept to create something new. With the 17, there's a gentleman by the name of Wilson Smith, who I had worked with, several times in the basketball business when we were doing Jordan. And, what I really respected about Wilson is that, he loved garnering information from multiple places. I always talk about, telling people that no one person has all the answers. I just don't believe that. And if you bring the right people together, the collective genius that each individual brings to that collection, you might be able to go places that you don't even know you can go to. And so I really applaud Wilson for being open to just being a sponge and hearing people who he respected to really garner a point of view that we could rally around. And there were times like we had been on trips to factories in Asia and like pissed off at one another, like ready to fight each other because things aren't going the way we believe they needed to go. But in this particular project, it was a collection of people that just loved getting to the point where we were. And so the story around the 17 was really Michael loves jazz music. And so we just started to obsess jazz. And what we started to look at back in the day is the nature of jazz itself. like when you get jazz artists together, their ability to act impromptu, like hear something and then just be able to riff off of that and go and make something special. That's what we basically wanted to do. So the impromptu nature of the music itself allowed us to start thinking about the shoe in a little different way. At the time, we reached out to a young artist that by the name of Mike Phillips. And Mike is just a phenomenal saxophonist. And we started rapping to him about like jazz music in general. And what was cool about Mike is he lived in the hip hop era, but he was a true jazz performer. So his ability to kind of create jazz and put a hip hop vibe on it, to me, was just awesome. So we sat down and started talking to him about music notes and why they do certain things. And that became kind of the impetus for creating this shoe. So and if you think about Michael's impromptu nature on the basketball court, like everybody knows him for going to the hoop against the Lakers. He's going up with the right and then impromptu switches to the left to flip it in. Like it's an instinct. It's an impromptu move. So the correlation between the game of basketball and how an athlete moves on the court and how a jazz artist brings his music to life or her music to life, there was just a great synergy there. And so we use that to tell the story around the Air Jordan 17. And so when you look at, the shoe itself, there's a lot of little things that we added to it. There's music notes that were on the side of the shoe. There's a lot of things that we wanted to relate to the game itself. And then we just took it to the nth degree with the packaging. A saxophone typically comes in kind of like this suitcase, that they would keep to protect their saxes with.
I knew this was coming, yeah.
Yeah, we were like, you know what? Let's protect the footwear the same way that a sax is protected in its case. So we used the case to package the shoes up in it. We wanted people to appreciate the story and how we got there. So we put a CD in it so that people could understand it was not only just a performance piece, or it wasn't an aesthetic thing, but it was a performance element. And so we tried to walk them through all of the performance elements of the shoe as to why it was, as well as the aesthetic versions of the shoe. And again, to me, like, I love that shoe, how it absolutely finished. Again, I think it was way ahead of its time. It was really a modern take on what Jordan had seen up to that point. And here today, what I love about it is that you've got a whole new generation. So, there's a generation that loves AJ1 through, AJ14. But now there's a newer generation, a younger generation that respects kind of the new world, AJ14 to AJ23, And so now, the same way that a lot of folks in my generation and maybe your generation covered some of the 4s and 5s and 6s, we're getting a younger generation that's starting to cover 16s, 17s, and 18s. And so I just think it's a great way to allow the legacy of the brand to live on. And literally, it's doing what we sought out to do. Back then, the goal was to create future retros for future generations. And so now today, you've got that shoe doing just that.
Now, again, I'm still like, I learned so much today. Like I'm sitting here like in awe of everything that you've been able to do. It's almost it's incredible how you could recall all this stuff and how it actually rolled out. Like you've lived a phenomenal life, and we've sat here and we're talking about shoes, right? Yeah. So outside of golf, which obviously you have a deep love for golf, and outside of the designing the shoes and Michael Jordan, who are you?
I'm a guy that followed his passion, and my passion led me to things that I couldn't even imagine. And now, while I believe, like, some might say the legacy that I have in sneaker culture was, really a big part, especially hip hop culture, and bringing back retro products. What I found myself is, now footwear is around the world of collaborations. And I found that some of the greatest young talent, creative talent out there that is in fashion, whether it's apparel or footwear, there are young kids out there or youngsters out there that have what it takes to take this game to a whole nother level. But they don't necessarily have a platform that's going to allow them to showcase what their true talent is. And so for me, as much fun as I had in the first chapter of my career, I honestly believe like the second chapter is about how I'm able to give back to the next generation of young creative talent that's out there. And so that's the impetus for why I started my shoe brand, which is Code by Gentry, and it lives in a little different world. It's more of a lifestyle world. It's where casual shoes meet sneakers type of. It's a hybrid product, and but it was I put it together because I identified with some super creative talent, and so in my old world, I used to sit down with all kinds of athletes. Back in the day, he had Eddie Jones, Vin Baker, had all these athletes, all the way up to Zion Williamson, all these athletes that I worked with. And what we would do is we would sit down with these athletes and talk to them about all the things that's going on in their life so that when we created and designed a shoe, consumers would then have a piece of that athlete's world. And then we would sell that product, and then the athlete would get royalties against it. The company would win, consumers would win. Well, I was like, you know what? I can take that same format and now bring that to young creative talent through my product. So I can sit down and create the product that I have. I can go out there and find young creative talent that wants to showcase their talent. I can let them veneer a shoe based on their creative ideas. I can go out and sell that product for them. And now I can give them a royalty for their creative talents. And maybe they can use that to start their own companies. If they have aspirations of going to design school to further their education around design, they could use money as almost like scholarship money. But that was the impetus for me, is to help pay it forward to the next generation of young creative talent that wants to play in this game.
That's amazing. And I salute you for that, because, a lot of people that when they get to the level that you're at, it's just time to retire and walk out in glory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now a question that we like to ask a lot of our guests is, in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, life is grand, and someone like yourself and all you've accomplished, a lot of us never get there. So where do you see yourself in this grand scheme of things out of a 1 through 100? Because it's a lot. I can't say 1 to 10. It won't really add up. Out of a 1 through 100, where do you feel like you're at in the scale of life?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'll say is anybody that I believe, anybody that has had any level of success in whatever they do, there's been someone, if not multiple people, that have been willing to take a chance on that individual. And so for me, I think there's been people throughout my career that have taken a chance on me. So again, paying it forward is important, because it's just the thing that you do if you want to make it sustainable for others. And I think that's what our culture needs to do more of, is making sure that we bring others with us. So whenever I can do that, that to me is what success looks like. So as much as I've accomplished, I think if you put me on a scale of 1 to 100, I'm probably at 70. Wow. Just because I have not, while I'm starting to do things, and I do a lot of things for people to help bring them along, I haven't reached the level of success there that I want. Once I accomplish that, then I can say I'm in the 80-90% zone, but I think I'm probably at 70.
What does your 100 look like? What does that success look like, where you could finally be at ease?
Yeah, it looks like a business that has brought a lot of people with me, but yet allows me to kind of step back and sit in more of a consulting type role to help them continue to further, the vision, whether that's with my brand or with other brands, because I do, consulting. And I think, it's really about, at the end of the day, it's really about just allowing people to, sharing my knowledge with people.
Yeah, and how's the the family? I'd imagine like doing the family life and doing what you do because you're in high demand.
Right.
I imagine that is something that you'd be able to buckle in with all that because I don't see you stopping.
Yeah, it's funny. That's why I kid myself because when I retired, I originally said, I'm good. I'm gonna ride off into the sunset, do some things here and there, pick and choose my spots. But I'm the most overworked retired guy you probably ever met. And you're right. The family piece is important. Like I've taken, my son and basically said, hey, what is it that you want to do? Because, and he's an ex-athlete, and it's important to understand that, back in the day, sports was like just the only business of sports was around being a professional athlete. Nowadays, man, whatever you're good at, and if you have a love for sport, like you can apply yourself in some way, shape, or form to the business of sport. And so, taking someone like my son and has a huge interest in film and in the film industry, and now having him be a part of my business and leading the charge there and showing him how to look at things. Those are the types of things that allow family to kind of carry out the legacy that I kind of share, but on their own path,
Yeah.
So
yeah, that has to be pretty cool though. I got a young son, right? I got him right here, and and I got a 4-month-old daughter, and so like awesome. just to be able to have them, like you're watching LeBron try to get like his son could say whatever he wants. Well, LeBron's gonna make the call to say no, he plays with me. You know what I mean? So like it's pretty cool to be able to see all this stuff coming together and knowing that you have your family right by your side, and to be able to have the success that you have. Now, another question I wanted to ask you again before you go is, do you have any samples or anything in the works that you could show to us?
You know what? We probably should have talked about that earlier because I would have had something, but no, I don't have anything here. What I can say though is, so the consulting work that I'm doing with the golf team, like there's some phenomenal storytelling that's coming up on projects. Like right now, it's really cool for me to see people are looking at some of the golf stuff that we're doing, and they're like, "That's so cool! I'm rocking this on the streets." Some of the stuff that doesn't have spikes, rocking them on the streets where they can't. And then when you see the stuff that does have spikes, people are super, excited about us just changing the game. Like back in the day with golf, people will wear shoes, buy shoes and keep them forever. But now it's almost like the same sneaker culture. Guys are rocking them with different outfits and changing it up. And so I'm pretty excited about the new apparel and the new technical product that I'm working with that team on. It's really, really special. It's like truly performance enhancing, has a different aesthetic that's going to change the game. And unfortunately, I don't have any samples here. They're back in the offices, but that's probably.
I had to try.
but and then on my brand, I think there's going to be some some cool things that people are going to trip out on. We've got so I launched my brand last July, and it's done really well from a standpoint of, imagine if Jordan was to do a lifestyle line. It's kind of like my version of what that would be. And so we're getting ready to launch new products, offerings, new colors with crazy cool stories. that people haven't heard of that I think they would appreciate living in this genre of the footwear business. And is people are going to see that come. The first ones will launch in July, and then all the way from July to December, just some really far out there crazy stuff, as well as some very democratic stuff that, you know, average Joes would like.
So I'll tell you this, right? You know, we're an up and coming platform, right? We're really starting to jump into the scene. So I would like if you could send us over a couple exclusive pairs of your shoes.
I got that. Yeah. You know what? Let's make sure our people get together, get your sizes, and we'll definitely do that.
Absolutely. That'd be super cool. And then another thing I want from you is I want to send over a classic shoe to you to be able to get a signature on them. I think that would be pretty cool if we can make that happen as well.
You got it, man. My pleasure.
And listen, congratulations on all your success and all the coming success that I imagine is to come. And again, we really would love to be a part of that brand. I know that whatever you're putting out, whatever product you're putting out is going to be phenomenal. I appreciate you for joining us for this episode of the Danza Project. And, you know, we're going to be here for the long run. So one thing about the Danza Project that I like to say is it's not a podcast, it's a network. You know what I mean? So I'll be looking forward to more conversations with you in the future.
Man, my pleasure. Let's do it together, man. You know, again, everything that I talked about, you know, as far as, you know, collaborating and putting others on the come up where we can help each other out. I think that's what we need to do more of. So anything I can do to help, I got your back. You just reach out. Now that we're connected, we connected for life.
Absolutely. My brother, you have a great day. And, you know,
all right, boss. Take care of yourself.
All right. Be safe.
Be well.